It's really not the weapons that are dangerous. It's the people you have to worry about.
Welcome to Heartland Arms, where skill, safety, and training all come together. I'm Michael, and we're going to go over some basic anatomy of firearms. Let's click over to the overhead real quick here. So this is what we're talking about when we're a firearm. So this right here, I have it all together. And then this right here, I have it one broken all down. Okay? So, and if you notice, this has the purple. One's mine, one's my wife. She does understand firearms. She goes through a lot of this stuff with us too. She learns and does this. So, guys, girls, it's all about learning. So, when we're talking about a firearm, there's some basic components with a firearm. There's core parts found in most firearms here for you. And that first one is going to be the barrel. So this is the barrel right here. This shiny piece right here. Okay. This is generally a metal tube that the bullet or the shot will travel through when the firearm is fired. Okay, so this guides the projectile using special rifling inside there. So let's go to the front camera. So in that little hole there, there's a swirl pattern in there. Okay, that's rifling. Some have them, some don't, and that's going to be there. And then on the complete version, you can see it there, and then that's the top of it. So when I'm looking at, there's with it out, there's with it in. So that's going to guide your projectile. Then you have the action, okay? The action is going to have a trigger. So we see our trigger there. Okay, so our trigger is there. There's actually a hammer or striker. So that's going to be in here. It's all generally inside, so this has all internal hammer, internal striker, all of that. There's a firing pin that's going to hit the back of the casing that's going to activate that, and then it's going to have a bolt or a slide. This particular one has a slide, so when this shoots, it's going to go back and then forward. So this right here, this upper part, this here is the slide. You also have a lot of them have a spring, so this one has a spring that goes there. So this is kind of what it looks like torn down. This is what it looks like all put together, okay? Then you have the chamber. The chamber is actually the back part of the barrel on this, okay? So that's where the fatter part that's not round, that's going to be the chamber. That's where your bullet is going to sit in there. And when that bullet is sitting in there, that means it's ready to fire. Okay, every firearm must have a chamber to hold a round that it's ready to fire. Okay? Now you also have your stock or your grip. Sometimes it's together depending on if it's a rifle, if it's a handgun. You have your grip here. That's what you're going to hold on to. Rifles and shotguns have a stock, which usually rests against your shoulder. And this is what's going to provide the control and the stability for when you're doing that, okay? Then you also have what is called the trigger guard. This right there is your trigger guard right here, okay? Not every firearm actually has a trigger guard. Some don't, very few. But most of them will have a trigger guard. What that does, that protects the trigger. It helps prevent accidental firings or blocking that trigger from being bumped or touched unintentionally. So if I drop it, it's not going to pull that trigger, okay? That's what you have there. Then you have your sights. So on this firearm, there's your sights. You see the white there? That's what you're going to line up to shoot, okay? They're at the top of the gun. They line up. Sometimes they're going to be what we call iron sights. Those, they have the front and rear notches. Sometimes they have these. Sometimes they glow. You could get all kinds of different special ones there. I want to say the sights on this one. Do you see how those are green? See how those are a lot. Let's line them up there. So see how those are kind of a greenish color and they kind of glow. That's because of the way they are. They're going to be like that. Even on my dummy, I still have kind of a little notch here and a kind of a little fake notch there, just because it's molded off of a real firearm. Okay, so they're all going to have some type of sighting system. And some of the rifles and some of the other stuff will actually have a scope, or you'll see other kind of optics that go on top of those. Now, everything also has a safety here. Okay, so when I'm looking at this one, it's on here too, but I'm going to show you on here. There's a little red dot there. When I slide that up, this has an external safety. So this has a safety that can go up, so that safety goes off and on. Not every firearm will have an external safety. A lot of times they have internal safeties. Some rely on internal designs as a safe action system. Some have an external, some have both, one or the other. But every firearm is going to have some type of built-in safety. Okay? Then you have the magazine. That's this right here. So you have the magazine that's going to hold your your bullets, basically. So this holds all the rounds that you're going to do. This is a detachable magazine, which means this one goes through and you pull it out, you pull it in. Some of them have internal magazines. So bolt actions will have where you feed them in. Shotguns will have a tube. Revolvers have a cylinder. Some have, lever actions have a little tube that's underneath them. There's all types of different ways, but every firearm is going to have some way of delivering the ammo. The only time you don't actually have a magazine is when you have a breech. There's some shotguns, some breech loading, where you just feed them one at a time. We're going to cover those in another show, but as a general rule, most have a magazine. Very, very few firearms will not have a magazine or a way of storing ammunition there. Okay? With all that said, keep in mind that identifying each part of your firearm here, and let's go back to the overhead. Each part of your firearm here could help you potentially understand if something goes wrong, where the problem is. Did you have a jam? And knowing the parts will help you clear out that jam. It'll also help, and I have a rag right here, it will help with cleaning. So when you put all this part and you know where this stuff is, and you're cleaning, you're going to clean the firearm. You're going to know how to tear it apart and where everything is. Oh, this is the barrel I'm cleaning. This is one of the spring that I'm cleaning. Knowing where things are, and if you notice when I have it torn apart here, that's where I'm going to put them in a certain order so I know where they're going. Okay? You also always want to communicate clearly about your firearms. And you always want to handle any firearm with more confidence, and knowing what part is what gives you a little bit more confidence when you're talking about a firearm, especially when you know the different parts of a firearm, what's involved in going through that. This is basic information that we're giving you. We're going to go over the different types and different parts, but everything has kind of very similar here for that. They look a little bit different, but the core anatomy is always going to be the same. Okay? So the functionality about these parts here, when you're going through all of this stuff, you do have how it all comes together, okay? So in this case, when you push the trigger, that hammer or the striker will hit the firing pin, okay? That firing pin hits the primer on the round. We're going to cover that in another show. We're going to go through that. The primer will ignite the gunpowder. It causes an explosion right up in here, right in this barrel here, right? Let's go to the front camera. So when you're pulling this trigger, firing pin goes from here, hits the round. The round's here. It's seated in this spot here. Gunpowder is going to explode in there. It's going to send the projectile out the front, okay? So that gas pressure, when it builds up in that bullet that's in the chamber is going out the barrel. The action, when you do that, when that fire goes on, it'll do this. It pulls back and then it'll go back through. So if it's a semi-automatic or a repeating firearm, it's going to automatically load that next round. We're going to cover the differences between single action and semi-automatic, all of that in another episode as well. And then you use your sights at the top of the game, at the top of the gun, to aim and take your next shot. That is where everything comes together. And understanding all this now is kind of where you're going to be. So once you understand, it's not very difficult. It's actually pretty easy to go through. It's just having that knowledge and understanding. It's not very complicated. Also, you're not going to be tearing apart firing pins or anything like that unless you're very advanced. So the internal guts here, I don't mess with those. I clean them. I make sure that they're there. But that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that they're clean, they're done. Of course, I'm going to oil and lube, but I'm going to take my rag and I'm going to clean this off, and I'm going to make sure that it's nice and clean, make sure that it's good. But they get dirty, and you do have to clean them and go through there. So this is what we're going through, is just understanding the different parts. When you understand the different parts and what moves and what's going on, it does kind of build you a confidence. When you don't know that much about it, and when you don't know that anything about a certain a firearm or anything, it kind of could be scary somewhat. But you always want to make sure that you're operating them safely, you're handling them in a responsible way, you're following those 4 rules, and you're always going to do the right thing. So if you have any questions on any part, or if we didn't cover a part that you thought we should have, go ahead and make something in the comments, say something. But make sure you give us a like, subscribe, follow. It's really hard to get a firearm education channel started. So the more likes, subscribes that we get, the better off we're going to be here. So no matter your experience, make sure that you keep learning, stay safe, and be ready. Thank you for joining us here at Heartland Arms. I'll see you on the next episode.